Catch-Ups with me, Tanya Wiley.
And me, Amelia Beaumont.
Coffee Catch-Ups is a Christian podcast all about life in your 20s. And just a little disclaimer before we begin, we are not theologians or teachers. We are just two people who love Jesus and are trying to live for him.
As a special, as it were, to finish off season 1, we are talking about 10 lies you are told in your 20s. I think we've covered a few of these over the course of the previous season, but we thought it would be good fun to just kind of go through a few of these now.
Before we start though, I just want to disclaim that we've entitled this lies you hear in your 20s, but I do think some of these, in fact a lot of them, are going to be things that will be lies that people in their 30s and 40s and whatever age you are here, and can be quite relevant for everyone. So if you are listening and you're not in your 20s, I'm looking at the list and I think these are probably things I'm going to be struggling with later as well.
Yeah. Tanya, would you like to kick us off with a lie?
It's very serious and it's a lesson I've had to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And the lie is that I don't need sun cream.
But it's true.
Look at my skin. It is so pale. For those of you who have never watched the visual or do not know what I look like, I am very, very light blonde hair with very, very pale skin. And every so often, I think that magically that the Lord will protect my skin from the sun, and therefore I do not need to put sun cream on. And that is a lie. It is Satan going, don't put sun cream on, you will burn.
What I enjoyed most about that was the voice. Thank you. You're bad.
Have you ever experienced that, Amelia?
Every single year. Especially the first time that the sun really comes out. And I'm just like, oh, finally it's sun. I can get myself some vitamin D. This is going to be brilliant. And for the first time in 26 years, I'm going to go brown and not bright red. And it's all going to be fine.
Okay, Amelia, do you have a lie?
I do. And this one's also very serious. Your favourite band will last forever.
Oh, yeah, because that's not true.
It's not true, is it? R.I.P. Busted.
Oh, throwback. Busted.
When they split up and everyone was like, no.
I feel like Busted was our generation's One Direction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time. We have just outed ourselves as millennials here and not Gen Z, but it was so sad.
Anyway,
I hate to break it to you, but your favourite band will not last forever. It's not going to happen. But there will always be new music. So
anyway, my next lie is slightly, I say, actually more serious than the band thing, although that is serious. I know.
Hey now.
And this is what I hear a lot, is that the 20s, your 20s, it's the best time of your life. Have you heard that before?
All the time. Literally all the time. Everyone's like, why are you miserable? Your 20s are a great time. And I'm like, well,
it's rude.
Are they?
It's really, I think it's just a really stupid thing to say. I think and we hear it a lot and it's a cliche, but it's such a rude thing to say. It's rude to people in their 20s who are having a difficult time. Like, what if you happen to go through some of your darkest years, just happen to be in your 20s? Well, that's not very nice to say, oh, it's the best time of your life. Really? Because I don't want life to get worse than this, kind of thing. And then also, if you're in your 30s, if you're in any age other than your 20s, that's really rude, because they could be having an absolutely lovely time.
I know, right? And the thing is, you go through so much development as well in your 20s. You do a lot of growing up, and there's nothing to say that all of that will go down the toilet afterwards. There's so much that you can do when you're not in your 20s.
No, I completely agree. I think there is something about being in your 20s. You are young, you are physically young and probably physically more able to do more, potentially. Maybe not everyone, but there is that element of it. And so, yeah, there is that idea of, this is probably the best time if you want to hike Everest, but, it doesn't mean you can't do that in your 30s. I actually don't feel like hiking Everest, actually. As a hiker, I'd say it doesn't appeal to me. I've digressed.
No, I'd quite like to visit base camp, but that's probably as far as I'd go.
Yeah, and that you have to train for.
Yeah, Exactly. A
It's
lot.
still a big deal. So, there are things about being in your 20s, and there's nothing wrong with saying to people, hey, seize the day and enjoy your life and be present and be like, woohoo, let's have fun and enjoy your existence and be grateful that you're here, and that God is pouring blessings upon you, because we all have blessings that he pours upon us. But the idea that it's the singular best time of your existence is actually biblically incorrect, because the best time is yet to come. And if we have that hedonistic view of this is the best time of my life, then actually we're really missing the point, because the best time is it's going to be when we're actually when we've kicked the bucket. So when we are enjoying.
To live as Christ, to die as gain, my friends. Come on.
Amen, sister.
Come on.
Okay, Amelia, have you got one for us?
I do. I can do it all. To elaborate on which is to say, I should be doing everything all the time. My list should be never ending.
Yeah.
But also I should be ticking off all of my to-do list. And it's a horrible one. It puts so much pressure on people. Like, and I think it's often the pressure that we put on ourselves, actually. I find is the worst. Like, because other people don't go outwardly necessarily, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, although sometimes they do. But like, I find I put this pressure on myself all the
Yeah.
time, because I have quite a few like kind of ongoing projects outside of work, and it's like, oh, I'd really like to achieve this and achieve that with all of these. And when I come home from work and I rest, I kick myself sometimes, I really do. And I'm like, why am I resting? Like, I've got such a long to-do list. And actually that's not the way it should be. It's like, you need rest. Rest is really important.
Yeah. And I mean, there's this concept of being able to juggle everything, isn't it? It's like, you are a human being. You are not like, you are not God. Like, calm down. Like, there's that expectation, I think, particularly, I think if all the things we're going to talk about today, there's an expectation with them that, you're right, perhaps we put on ourselves, but perhaps it sneaks up on us because of things that we see, particularly on social media. I know we spoke about social media creating that kind of that envy of going, oh, well, okay, I need to do that. And then there's this picture of the perfect person who is an entrepreneur and an amazing I don't know, wife and mother at the same time, and an amazing got an amazing social life, and it's got fantastic finances, got their own house, got married, whatever it is. This list of these things that people are juggling all the time, seeing their friends, also doing self-care, going for a run, going to the gym, going to the theatre, going to doing this, meeting that person, doing that, also having a thriving career. And there's just so much.
Absolutely. The mantra is hustle 24/7, isn't it? And it's just like, that is physically impossible. Because actually all of these projects, or all of these like things that you want to be able to do, you are not physically going to be able to do them if you are not resting, because you're not giving yourself a chance to recover. And I'm so guilty of this all the time.
I've heard it described as like juggling. You're juggling so many different things. And you can only juggle, when you watch a juggler, they can only do it for so long, and eventually something will drop. Doesn't matter how skilled they are, how amazing they are at juggling, the more balls you add to the juggling, eventually something will drop, and more than likely they'll all fall on the floor. And I think that's what's a really interesting thing when we're doing so much all at the same time, and we're trying to juggle all these things, is you can potentially drop all of them on the floor, because you become so exhausted that everything just falls. And I heard somebody describe the juggling thing as what you really want to do is drop the ones that are plastic, but not the ones that are glass. So there's things in your life which are made of glass, and there are things that are made of plastic that will bounce, and you can pick them up again later and they'll be fine. But too often I find one of the difficulties in the idolizing of wanting to be able to achieve everything is that we might accidentally drop a glass ball, which will smash when it's dropped, like a key friendship, or a key time with somebody, or something, whatever you consider to be your glass ball in your life. If you drop that, maybe your spiritual welfare and health, it's not gone forever, but it's harder to pick those glass bits up and keep juggling. I don't know where I went on with that metaphor, but I hope it's helpful.
No, it's a great metaphor. I really like that analogy. Actually, it's really helpful. the key is prayer. If you have a lot going on and you're going, actually something needs to give, like I need to stop something, but I don't want to, and I don't know what that should be, like pray about it, because he knows exactly what your capacity is, and what he wants you to be doing at any given time.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, line number 5. Give it to us.
All friendships are forever.
Oh,
Mm.
ouch.
Mm.
Ouchie. That
Tricky
hurts, doesn't
one.
it?
Yeah, it does. I think it does because um oh man, I love my friendships with people. I love people.
Mm.
And it can be a real heartbreak when a friendship drifts or goes and finishes. And you know, it's happened to all of us because you know you can't sustain all of the friendships, and that's how it's supposed to be. It's a healthy thing. Some friendships are for the now, for the short term. Some friends you walk with for your life, and I think that's a really hard thing to come to terms with sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I have experience of this, and it is really difficult.
Mm.
Um, I find particularly as people's kind of lives change quite a lot, like people get married, people have kids, and actually, and sometimes that does mean that their attention or your attention given, depends who it is who's changing. People's attention it sometimes has to change, because as as a child, you don't want to be raised by parents who are like doing too much and don't have time for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it is healthy to go, actually, do you know what? It's been lovely while it's lasted, but this is time to leave it. Unfortunately, it's not always so cut and dry as that. I've had to learn that the hard way, because you kind of it's difficult, isn't it, when you see people drifting, especially
Mm.
people that you have been relatively close with, and it's something that you kind of have to come to terms with. I think, like, I had to do a lot of hard work on occasion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really complex matter actually, and I think maybe it's something to talk about more on a full episode because it's a really interesting one. But there's different types of kind of friendships going apart, isn't there? There's that kind of natural drift that you do naturally. That I think about people I went to university with. We stayed in contact at the beginning, and then just slowly it's gone, and it's very healthy, and it's just what's happened, and nobody's hurt massively. And then there's the other friendships where one person just sort of, for some or other reason, just went no. And there's probably a reason behind that. And if you're on the other side and you go, I don't know why, it can be a really hurtful thing. To not know why is this person just now blanking me or whatever, and I really miss them and what have you. Those can be really hurtful. And then there's the ones where you have to do that to somebody because you go, actually, this person is causing me harm and I actually have to take a distance away. I know there's been a period of my life where I've had to make that decision for various different friends who I went, oh, I actually don't have the capacity right now to invest in this friendship in a way that's going to be healthy. And so navigating that is so tricky. A friendship doesn't necessarily need to be a constant communication because there's only a few friends that you can actually fit into that sphere of communication. We talked about changing the spheres in the episode with parents, but that happens with friends as well. You've got your friends who you talk with every once in a while, but they're still friends. And then you've got people who you talk at all the time.
Mm.
And I think part of growing up and growing in faith and in confidence of yourself is being able to be okay with people moving and becoming more distant or closer or whatever, and going, well, I'm going to enjoy this for what it is and still value and love that person, even if we drift.
Yeah. The spheres thing is a really good analogy, because again, it's kind of going back on what we just talked about. We can't do everything all the time, and that includes communicating with everybody all the time. And I think actually it's kind of what we touched on as well in the people pleasing episode. Like sometimes, it is good to step back from things as well and say no, because that's the most healthy thing for everybody involved, even if that might cause some pain.
But I think when it comes to the lie, you're so right, because it's tricky. So when it comes to the lie of all friends are forever, I think that is a lie that can be really destructive if you really cling on to it, in the sense of, but we're friends, so we should be friends forever. And then you allow the divide that was just distance that could potentially, because distance can then get shorter at another point in life, you never know. If you allow the divide to be so wide by your resentment because of this lie, you're really denying God the opportunity to mold your friendships in a way that he wants.
Absolutely.
Would you like to hit us with another lie?
I am defined by what I do for a job.
Stop it. No.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because do you know what? So many times when you are introduced to people and you see your name, and then usually the second or third question is, and what do you do?
Yeah.
Implying, what is your work?
Let's be honest, we spend many, many hours working, but it is such a potential idol, and it certainly has been for me. That it is, just hearing you say it challenged me. I was like, yeah, okay, because I define myself by what I do. And so many people do. And this is something that I think, you do forever, because look at when people retire, they often go, oh, well, what do I do now? Because that has been part of my identity for such a long time. And so, it is it's not just for people in their 20s.
For sure. But also I think it's, it creates the answer to that question, what do you do? Then immediately kind of creates a preconception in that person's mind, depending on what they understand about your job. And so we end up defining each other as well as ourselves, as we've discussed in previous episodes. My current job is office manager. This is not the job that I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And so to define myself as office manager, for me, can actually be quite like, that's actually not true. Like, yes, that's what I kind of do, but that's not who I am. Like, what lights me up is not being an office manager. Surprise, surprise. How about you? Because I realise you're obviously in the job that you want to do. Yeah.
Doing a job that you love and that is also your calling is a really interesting one, because I think I've spoken before how in one of the other episodes of the podcast is actually God really has called me into the creative arts. And that's a brilliant thing. But because that's where you're called, Satan also wants to try and stop you from doing that to the best of your ability. And what better way than to make it look like he's encouraging, but actually encourage you to idolize the job and put your worth into what you do. And so if I know that I'm idolizing it, if my mood and emotions are subject to whether I have a job or not, or whether I'm doing well in my job or not, whether I can really call myself an actor this month or not. And that's a constant thing to check in, because you consume yourself with the job, with people who are in the same job, and before you know it, it can become your identity, but your identity is not the job. And so really it's all about checking in and trying to not be solely the job.
Absolutely. And I think again, it's kind of like it helps us to kind of question where our foundations lie. Kind of like what we were talking about in the COVID one, when I was saying about the last sermon that we had at church before lockdown, and the guy that was preaching was saying, whose hand are you holding? Because if it's not God's hand, then you are going to fall. And actually that's true of all areas of life, not just of through foundation shaking periods like lockdown. But also as well, I think there was a verse I mentioned in the singleness podcast about the calling that all of us have. Like, all of us are children of God, and all of us are called to serve him and to the plans that he has for us. It doesn't matter whether you are employed, unemployed, single, in a relationship, or whatever your status is, inverted commas. Like, that calling is still on all of us. And that should be what defines us. Like, there's that brilliant song, I Am Who You Say I Am. What a tune. What a tune.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you make. It's also about who we're bearing the fruit for. Because if you flip it and you go, well, I'm working and I work for the Lord, so it doesn't matter what job I do, whether I'm employed or not, or whether I'm where I want to be, or do my dream job or not doing my dream job, I'm working for the glory of the Lord. That is what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
when you succeed, it's God's success, not yours. And when you don't succeed at promotion or something like that, then that's because you're working for the kingdom, and God said, no, 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 not that way. Um,
Mm.
and when you flip it like that, it's hard to do because, we're innately selfish beings, but that's something to keep coming back to and going, well, actually, I can't take this promotion to heaven with me. But I am around people and I can work for the kingdom, and God always places you somewhere.
Mm.
And we talked about this on, I think it's on the I'm Not Where I Thought I'd Be or something like that, where we talked about how if you're unhappy with where you are, ask God why you're there. Um,
Sure.
and it's the same thing with the jobs, is it is just part of you. It is just where God's put you. It is not who you are. But it could be something, an amazing opportunity for the kingdom. So
Mhm.
go and meet those broken people in your office, in your workplace, who actually need to feel love, because we are so angry at the moment and so exhausted. I feel like everyone's exhausted. Maybe that's just a reflection of myself. I don't know.
No, I'm feeling that too. Give us another lie.
Okay. Oh yeah. It matters what people think of me.
Oh, but doesn't
Oh,
it?
people pleasing. Oh yeah. It's one of those lies, isn't it? That you're like, yeah, of course it doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter what other people think. But then you do it and you just let people's opinions go. Oh my goodness, what are you going to think? Even earlier, so like earlier today, we went live on Instagram, and what I could see that one of the people watching was one of people who I know from an acting gig, and I just thought, oh my goodness, he's going to mock this so much. He really is going to mock it. And I started going, oh, maybe we shouldn't say too much about Jesus, and I don't, that kind of part of you that's like, okay, I'm not going to listen to this, but
Mm,
that's still there. It's just a
yeah.
small trivial example which doesn't paint me in the best light, but it's true. Um, and there is the element of, okay, how much of what people think of me is just it's just there in the periphery, just kind of
Yeah, I
bubbling.
feel you. I feel you. And it's like I get this even when I like go to church with people that I know
Mm,
very, very well and who I know in my head don't really care like what I look like, what kind of state I'm in, etc. And there was one week where I was just in an absolute state. I was just feeling quite like stuck as well in this rut. I've been working a huge amount. Just all of this stuff like just kind of came crashing down. And I was in a row with people that I knew, as in like knew well enough to cry in front of. And
yeah.
I still took myself out of the row to go sit on the sofas at the back of the church and
Mm.
sobs.
Was that because you didn't want them to like judge you or something?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
yeah.
literally. And I was like, oh gosh, they really can't see me in
Mm.
this mess. Where again, like I know in my head it would have been absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But like there's nothing wrong with taking yourself off to cry, but you know what I mean, like the premise of what are they going to think of me if I break down in front of them,
Mm.
and like actually it could have really helped because they could have given me some real wisdom in my situation.
It's everyone has it. Like it really roots back to school days where you wanted people to like you. And it can be really destructive. I remember an ex-boyfriend of mine was always obsessed with, oh, that doesn't look cool, or this looks cool. And I
Mm,
remember going, why does it matter? He went, but we do. And he just went, well, we do care what people think of us. Like there's no getting away from that. And I
mm,
went, yeah, but there is fighting, there is trying to combat it. Because it's not biblical. We should care what God thinks and not what other people think. It doesn't mean that we go out of our way to be horrible or deliberately provocative or whatever. But we need to combat that. So it's about how do we go about doing that.
yeah, I think a lot of it has to come from, again, like we were talking about, where our foundations are.
Mm.
Because in the end, it only really matters what Jesus thinks, and it sounds like a really cheesy Christian answer, but it's
Yeah.
also true. It's also actually true because the opinions of other people are constantly changing. People's attention shifts all the time. And like I just this is hilarious, but the example that comes to mind is Bridgerton, when like they've had this kind of huge scandal and nobody comes to the ball that they put on.
Yeah.
Um, but the way that they actually kind of just like they get on with it anyway, and they have a good time at this ball with like
Mm.
10 of them there. Um, and then there's a comment that someone makes within that series. It's like the Tom will forget all of these people around you will at some point move on with their lives to the next bit of gossip, and it's so true. Like actually, at some point, what you think you're doing wrong, that people are gonna be completely, awful about and judge you for, and all of this, like that won't last forever.
I agree, and I think what also we have the reason we're talking about the lie is because it is a lie, and it's one that we buy into ourselves. Like you were saying earlier, you go, oh, what will they think of me? They probably don't care. Like I think about it. I used to really, I don't know, I used to really struggle with the concept of going for a run in a busy place where people would see me, because so I'm a bit more of a runner now, but especially when I first started, I was like, I didn't want anyone to see me. I was so like, I don't know, ashamed to be seen running. People don't care. They're probably just thinking, gosh, she's running, I'm not. um and actually, in combating some of the people pleasing tendencies, because believe you me, I'm a big people pleaser, but I'm getting better. I
Right.
wonder about practicing the small things which lead to the bigger things. So
Mm.
things like, I'm gonna go for a meal by myself. I don't care what people think. I don't care if people think I'm sad. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna wear that outrageous outfit because I don't care.
Yeah,
Be
yeah.
weird, be wacky. I recently, a few months ago, decided to run around Leeds Castle like a buzzard because I was in practice for a show, and I did it. I don't care what people think.
I love that image. It's one of my favourites. An analogy that came to mind is like, how on most often on like American TV programs where they have a school reunion, and it's
Mm,
like 10 or 20 years later, and you're about to see all these people that you went to school with. Like it's almost, I think in these situations, almost always feels kind of similar to that. It's like
yeah,
about to step into this situation, and everybody is going to be judging me because like they've reached a certain point in their lives that I
yeah.
haven't reached myself.
I bet there are. So that's a room full of people who are trying to prove themselves because they're scared. Everyone in that room is scared that people are judging them. So
Mm,
so hey, why not be the person that goes, yeah, my life's a bit of a mess. Cried last week. Not doing great financially, and still alone. That's the truth. And people, I bet there would be an almost audible sigh of relief where everyone went,
yeah,
oh, okay, finally somebody's been real.
yeah, so true, so true. And I think this is why it's really important to be honest with the people around you as well as to how you are. Like you don't need to give them like the whole lowdown of every single emotion you felt in the last 24 hours. But like, at the same time being real with actually like particularly at church, we have a tendency to say, oh yeah, I'm fine, how are you?
Yeah.
Um,
My friend Owen does this really cool thing. I think I might have mentioned it before, where when he goes, so how are you? And then you just go, yeah, I'm great, thanks. He goes, but how are you actually? He gives you permission to say how you actually feel. It's not like a third degree thing. It's just going, well, you have permission. You're gonna hit me with your next lie.
I am, and it's kind of related,
Yeah.
but it is. I need to look perfect.
Oh. That's a big one. I think for your 20s as well, because you're supposed to look the best you will ever look.
100%. And like, I think again, this whole, oh, what will other people think if I go out the house looking a mess? No one's looking at you. Like literally, no one cares. Um, but yeah, needing to look perfect all the time, it's not going to happen. Let's face it. That only happens in films.
Yeah, and
Usually,
only because they've got a team of people doing their hair and makeup.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like even like adventure, do you know what that annoys me in like adventure films and stuff, where the women walk out and like they might have like a streak of mud on their face and like a few kind of like rips in their clothing, but aside from that, they still look incredible. And
Yeah.
you're just like, dude, you've just like run through a forest, been like blown up 3 times, and you know been in a sword fight or something, And like there's no way, nobody looks like that. Do you know what I really love actually is at the start of Frozen when Anna wakes up, sits up, and her hair is just like,
Yeah, I've
like
seen that in so many memes.
so
Yeah.
accurate, so accurate.
But yeah, I don't know. I think as you get older, because you know you get your skin gets wrinklier and your body's not able to do as much. And I know a lot of people, particularly women, I think, you know, there's so much put on what women look like. It is I'm not saying that it's not like that for men, but it is insane how much of you who you are is about what you look like beauty privilege is a thing. Like you just get treated better if you're beautiful, or potentially worse because you get more negative attention. And I think these are all brought up really nicely with the Barbie movie at the moment. Did you go and see it?
I did, and honestly, I recommend it so much. I laughed through like 90% of that thing.
But I think, you know, the pressure is there, and it's also not in the church,
Mm,
which makes me sad because the Bible is so clear. You know, beauty fades, but a woman who respects and loves the Lord is to be treasured. You know, it's just obvious. But God goes, I don't care. You're not even going to have these after you die. This is just what your body's a temple. Look after it. It's God given. It's a gift for you. But the Bible's really clear. Beauty, it fades.
I really like your point about the Barbie movie, because when I saw it, one moment that really stuck with me. Not No spoilers, guys, don't worry. But there's this brilliant point where obviously Margot Robbie is playing like the main stereotypical Barbie, and there's a point where she's just like crying. She's like, "I'm not pretty anymore. Like I'm not stereotypical Barbie anymore. Like I can't do this, can't do that, blah blah blah." And there's a hilarious moment where Helen Mirren, as the narrator, go. She literally says, "Note to the filmmakers: don't cast Margot Robbie in this role if you're trying to make this point." So good. The entire cinema was just like crying. But like it's so easy, isn't it, to feel like even if you look like Margot Robbie, like I'm not saying Margot Robbie feels like this, but you know what I mean. You know, actually we all have points, don't we, when we just go, oh, I feel horrible. Like, but actually you're again coming back to this whole thing, like your worth is not in your physical beauty. Like we said, like beauty fades.
Yeah.
And it's not, that's not the most important thing, because the Lord sees the heart.
It's interesting that so many of the ones we're talking about are identity focused, because I really think that is a huge like there's a spiritual warfare in that. Is like Satan does try and shift where your identity is, put idols in the way. We talked about in the other podcast, the Vanity podcast, about how is it sneaking up there, your looks are more important than other things, because that can happen too.
Absolutely. So line number 9.
Tomorrow will be better. Now I need to explain this one, because tomorrow potentially will be better, and it's sometimes a really useful thing to say if you're having a bad day.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow will be better. So I don't mean that. What I mean when I say the lie that tomorrow will be better is more that when I do this, things will be better. When I go there, it will be better. The idea that I can only look to there because here is not good enough. And the lie, tomorrow will be better, over there is better, that's better than here, is a constant envy of somewhere else or something else, and it's usually born in lack of contentment. Do you know what I'm talking about? Am I making sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I honestly have this so much of the time. Again, when I get the job that I want,
Yeah.
everything will be fine. When I move out of my parents' house, everything will be fine. When I have a car, everything will be fine. It makes it really hard to count your blessings because actually you're just not even putting value on the things that you currently have. And it's not to say that actually like you shouldn't want better things in your life, but like actually to a point, actually, like you say, it can be really destructive. And the things that I currently have in my life, like a roof over my head, which many people don't have. Again, it sounds like a cliche, but it's so important to count that as a real blessing and not take those things for granted.
Yeah.
Which is so easy to do when you're looking just for the next the next thing that will finally get you towards the Instagram worthy life.
Yeah, because at what point are you satisfied? Like, really? Because if you cultivate that way of living, then that was only going to get worse. When I do this, it's going to get better. And it's a real stealer of joy. And that's what lies are, aren't they? All these lies that we're talking about, they steal your joy, because they're either going, oh, you don't look perfect. So if you were having a good day, or you felt a bit okay in yourself, then it steals your joy. It goes, tomorrow will be better because today isn't good enough. You know, I was about to say something about sun cream then, but I know that that's actually a very useful thing that we've you know, you can do it all, so push yourself to the point where you can do nothing. And all these lies are about not doing now, not enjoying and being present. And we spoke about it a lot in the podcast before. Okay, just be, because if you're going, oh, it'll be better then, you're not going, God, what do you want now? Last lie.
Yes.
It's your one.
So, guys, the final lie. It all ends when you're 30. No.
It's getting closer.
Oh, it is, isn't
Big
it?
3-0.
Like, I go through periods where I'm like, whatever. And then also periods where I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. It all ends at 30. What do you mean?
Well, life is over, essentially. By the time you reach 30, everything, all of your goals, you can't achieve them anymore because you had your time, so you cannot do anything after that. There's no way that you can find your soulmate if you haven't found them already. There's no way that you can get the dream job because it is too late. And your body is about to start disintegrating, so bad luck.
Big sad end of. Okay, well, that's the end
That
of
is our
and
that's our central message of the podcast.
Tune in next week for some more doom and gloom. I know what you mean. This idea of, I have to have achieved a significant proportion of success by the time I'm 30. And I think we were talking earlier, we were trying to tie a few things in a similar theme of, I've got to always have this life that's going up in this trajectory. And for some reason, most of us put a big barrier on the digit 30.
I don't know what it is about 30 that is supposed to be so terrible. Like, I know plenty of people who are over the age of 30 and they're still, functioning. It should be a great age as well. Like, what's wrong with your 30s?
At the same time, what's so great about being in your 20s? You're still, like, let's be honest, when you start your 20s, you're very much a new baby, shiny adult. You're like this, how do I do life by myself? It's your first, probably the majority of people, you're probably your first experience of living alone. I know you were laughing at my noises that I just made then.
I was loving it.
It's probably your first experience of like living alone, trying to you're just starting career stuff, and it's a weird time because you're sort of treading water, as it were, and sort of hopefully sort of desperately trying to stay afloat. So actually, I think I know a lot of people, a lot of friends who are in the other decades, 30s, 40s, who really sort of have sat back into it and gone, actually, I'm going to enjoy, because 20s felt very much like a scrabble to try and understand who I was. And 30s, I know now. So actually, what we really need to do if we're feeling like this is talk to people in their 30s and 40s, because it's not as big a deal as we think. But an interesting one is, I think, we mentioned it, I can't remember which podcast, but everyone's on their own journey. And so we all just start measuring ourselves against these things that aren't actually real. So whether that be the number 30, whether that be the people, your colleagues and your friends who are on a different journey, it's counterproductive.
There's this brilliant moment in the Gospel of John where Jesus and Peter are walking along the beach. And John is like, he's kind of like following, but like a few places behind. I don't really know why, but there he was anyway. Jesus and Peter are having this conversation, and Peter's like, yeah, but like, what about that guy? And he's like pointing to John, and he's like, what about his journey? And Jesus kind of goes, well, what about his journey? Like, we're not talking about him, we're talking about you. And actually, like, Peter's story was so different to John's, so different. I mean, both of them obviously played their part in the establishment of the early church. Um, Peter ended up crucified upside down, and John ended up exiled on Patmos. Both of them had extraordinary parts to play in the story of the church. Neither one had, less impact, arguably, than the other. But actually, their journeys were different, and that's okay. Like it's and I think that kind of is really important to remember in these things. It's like actually some people will achieve all of the things that you want to achieve by the time they are 30. Good for them. And actually maybe you won't. And that's also okay, because actually that thing might be a lot better for you in your 40s or in your 50s. Or you may never get there. And that's okay too, because actually like the things kind of like we were saying in the previous one, like tomorrow will be better, like they didn't necessarily matter that much.
Yeah.
And actually sometimes it's not right for you to have that thing.
Going that person's got that which I want, you forget what you've achieved, and achieved I mean in the sense of what God has achieved through you, because you go, oh well, that's where I want to be. That we get so convinced, and this totally ties into the number 9 as well. We get so, our gaze gets fixed on where we want to be, that we go, what, we forget actually, look what is exciting here and what God is doing here and now. There is an element of that with it all ends at 30. Again, you're looking to the future when, yeah, there's an element of the healthy to look to the future. Where do I want to be? God, where do you want to take me? But actually, the exciting thing is about doing life with God and the Holy Spirit is that you are not in charge of that, which is exciting and also quite relieving. Because imagine if you didn't have faith, you'd be thinking, gosh, I've got to climb this mountain all by myself, and I'm just me. I'm just me. I don't know what I'm doing. Again, where your attention is and when you're rooting in God, you become less addicted to success. Or a different kind, worldly success, I should say, because you start to become addicted to what God thinks is success. And let's remember that God thinks loving him and loving your neighbor is at the top priority.
So true. It does come back to that idea of success and failure, and actually what is true success. Because there's no time limit on that. And there are people in their 80s and 90s still learning about faith, and I think that's beautiful actually to see and to hear admitted actually in when people are in their at that age or whatever age, kind of I think usually above 50 actually, when I hear people going, I'm really still figuring this out, is actually so encouraging. Like you don't need to have it all figured out by the time you're whatever age. But yeah, there's no time limit on the successes that God gives us to aspire to at all.
Yeah. And it's easy for us to say from a podcast. It's harder to do when you're going through it and you do it, living it every day, and you feel stuck. And I think feeling stuck isn't something that you get just in your 20s. I think that is what they define as a midlife crisis, is feeling stuck and things like that. And so that's every decade. And it's I don't know. I heard something recently about growth. And that if we feel stuck psychologically, it's because we're not growing. I wondered, to combine that, because that was a non-Christian study, but it was a psychologist saying, if you go and try and grow in some way, so if you, I don't know, take up a new hobby and learn something or try and study something, that suddenly start to feel a little bit of a shift of feeling less stuck. I wonder what that would be like if we put that into a faith context and we go, I feel really stuck, whether that's career-wise, whatever it is that you feel stuck about. And if you went, I wonder how I can grow in faith. And if you did that, I wonder if that would have the same psychological effect of going, oh, I'm going to shift some stuff here.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but having this conversation with you, Amelia, it's gone, oh, he's thrown up some stuff, and it's also thrown up some flipping idols, some things that can sneak in between you and your relationship with God. What a really good idea to have a conversation about some of the lies that you think you're being told, either by yourself, by society, by Satan, whoever, whatever it is, have a conversation about it and see if you can start to shift them. And one of the things I wanted to actually say when we thought about doing this podcast was one of the things that the speaker at my church when I was a student said. She used to say, when people say a lie, I verbally break it in the name of Jesus. So I break that in the name of Jesus. And so over each one of the lies, whenever, and she used to do it when people said it to her right there. If somebody said something to her, like cursed her with their words, she'd just go, yeah, I break that in the name of Jesus. Just casually, just say it. And there's power in that. And I believe that over these lies as well, that we just want to break them in the name of Jesus. They do not define you or any part of your life. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Come on. For our final recommendation section, we are doing general downtime activities, things to do to just chill out a little bit. Tanya, how do you chill out?
I don't.
Great. Well, thank you for that very helpful recommendation. I would like to, as a disclaimer, this is not the message that Coffee Catch-Ups is trying to put out.
I am joking. I do chill out. It does happen.
Sure it does.
I mean, there are loads of ways to chill out. I quite often just watch something funny, like comedy. I like watching comedy. But my go-to chill out is actually hiking, which may seem like it's not a chill out to people, but that is my ultimate.
But yeah, hiking's a good one. I actually quite enjoy that because it does, like, it's really good for you, isn't it? It gets you outside and in the fresh air.
Same to you, Amelia. Tell us how to chill, because teach me your ways, oh wise one.
I mean, I love taking a book to a coffee shop and just sitting and reading, like, comfy seat, people watch for a little bit, good book and good coffee is like my kind of like the dream, really, when I have time to do that. That's my favourite.
You know what you can enjoy with a good coffee?
What's that, Tanya?
Coffee catch-ups.
That was a great plug. I say plug as if people aren't already listening to the video.
If they've got to this point, they've already been through enough. They've been through a journey.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.